can be here. Thank you, dear devotees. Thank you, Adipurusha Prabhu. I'm so nourished and encouraged when you chant in the mornings. It connects with my soul. Thank you so much. And I love that you chant the prayers to our guru, our spiritual master, because it makes me humbled to remember that I'm going to get purified today by sharing whatever realization I've gotten, and only by the mercy of the spiritual master. Thank you very much. Haribo. So we're reading today, Damodar Priya. Thank you so much for your consistency on being on this call. And of course, Ananda Bihari Prabhu, you're like the foundation that keeps the wheel turning. Yeah, like the mandat, you like the churning of the ocean, right?
I'm churning my own ignorance, but my saving grace is the devotees that Krishna sent in my life, and I'm trying to stick to them.
Yes, that is all of our saving grace, isn't it? And thank you for being that example that we can follow. Thank you so much. And yeah, there's so many wonderful friends on here. I'm humbled and grateful. Thank you. So we're reading today from Canto 10, chapter 46, verses 14 through 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaivam Narottamam Devam Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Muhurdayat. Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtake. So Ananda Bihari Prabhu, I hear Adipurusha when he chants Jairada Madhav in the mornings, and I'm just wondering, do we do that again?
We
Or
can skip it today. We can skip.
are you,
Yeah.
yeah?
He was pretty sincere. Yeah, he was sincere and nice. I think the job is the justice is served.
Of course. And it cannot be more beautifully done, actually, at least not by me. So yes, thank you. That's a heart connection. So our verses today are about a heart connection. How do we make this heart connection with the Supreme Lord in our conditioned state? Is it possible? So we're going to hear this beautiful, beautiful conversation between these great personalities that have captured the heart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastai Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine. Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatyadi Shatarine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastai Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shitatmane. Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasudeva, Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpa Turubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavibhyo, Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada. So, Ananda Prabhu, I just appreciate how you're not a micromanager. You always give each person an opportunity to choose whatever verses it is that they want to speak on. And I never like look at the verses before. I just say, okay, this date worked for me. Let's choose that date. And then I don't get to look at the verse till maybe a day or so before I'm going to give the class. And so when I looked at the verses yesterday, I was like, oh, Krishna, thank you. Because these verses are just so beautiful. They're right in line. I'm so much in alignment with what I like to hear about from in the Srimad Bhagavatam conversations and the kind of dialogue that goes on when great personalities, when pure devotees get together and they speak about Krishna. So I'm going to try to bring up my screen, or I don't know, Ananda, can you do that for these verses? It's so beautiful. I'd like the devotees to see.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a few seconds to pull up the verse, but I'll do that. I'll share the screen.
Okay, otherwise I could fill it out. Yeah, as we're waiting for Nanda Bihari Prabhu, we all know that this conversation is going on by Sri Uddhava Prabhu and Ananda Maharaj, the father of Krishna. And of course, in these verses that we're going to read, Nanda and all the residents of Vrindavan are lamenting that Krishna has not come back from Mathura, right? He went to Mathura to see his parents, his actual parents. He had not seen them in such a long time. There we go. So let's see. Text 14. Okay, I'm going to do the Sanskrit. Tamagatam samagamya Krishnasya nucharam priyam Nanda pratapa rishvajya Vasudeva diyarchayat. And the synonyms, okay, do the synonyms. Tam him Uddhava agata arrived. Samagamya approaching, Krishnasya of Krishna, Anucharam the follower, Priyam dear, Nanda Maharaj, Pritaha happy, Parishvajya embracing, Vasudeva diya thinking of Lord Vasudeva, Archayat worshipped. Srila Prabhupada's translation. As soon as Uddhav arrived at Nanda Maharaj's home, Nanda came forward to meet him. The cowherd king embraced him in great happiness and worshiped him as non-different from Lord Vasudeva. Srila Prabhupada's purport, short and sweet. Uddhava looked just like Nanda's son, Krishna, and gave pleasure to anyone who saw him. Thus, although Nanda was absorbed in thoughts of separation from Krishna, when he saw Uddhava coming towards his house, he became aware of external events and eagerly went to embrace his exalted visitor. Okay, I'll just go to the next one, then I'll come back and just share. Okay. After Uddhava had eaten first-class food, been seated comfortably on a bed, and been relieved of his fatigue by a foot massage and other means, Nanda inquired from him as follows. Purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport. Srila Jiva Goswami mentions that Nanda had a servant massage Uddhav's feet, since Uddhav was Nanda's nephew. Next one. Okay. Nanda Maharaj said, my dear most fortunate one, does the son of Sura fare well now that he is free and has rejoined his children and other relatives? There's no purport to this verse. Text 17, another one without a purport, Srila Prabhupada's translation. Fortunately, because of his own sins, the sinful Kamsa has been killed, along with all his brothers. He always hated the saintly and righteous Yadus. And the Latin, okay, one more after this. Translation, does Krishna remember us? Does he remember his mother and his friends and well-wishers? Does he remember the cowherds and their village of Raj, of which he is the master? Does he remember the cows, Vrindavan forest, and Govardhan hill?
We're supposed to cry here.
Yes. Yeah.
Do we do 19? I don't see the verses. Are we supposed to cover 19 today?
Yeah, okay. 19. That's the last one. Will Govinda return even once to see his family? If he ever does, we may then glance upon his beautiful face with his beautiful eyes, nose, and smile. For Srila Prabhupada's purport. Now that Krishna has become a prince in the great city of Mathura, Nanda has lost hope that he would come back to live in the simple cowherd village of Vrindavan. But he hoped against hope that Krishna would come back at least once to visit the simple cowherd folk who had raised him from birth. Hare Krishna, Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Jnanat Miranda Sya, Vinagana Shalakaya, Chakshuramatamena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So these verses are so very beautiful. Thing that some of the points that caught my attention is so many lessons to learn from these verses. However, the how my heart was captured in these verses is to enter a little bit, as much as Krishna will allow me, to enter into that space where Nanda Maharaj is experiencing lamentation that Krishna has left. Nanda Maharaj is grieving. And, if any of you have experienced grief, which I'm sure you have, everybody experiences grief these days because there's always so many things that's going on to cause grief. Of course, in the conditioned state, usually our grief is based on something that we want to have that we don't have, or something we lost that we value. And usually in the conditioned state, those things that we value were things or persons that somehow or other we tend to have some attachments to those persons in ways that we are oftentimes, especially for those that have no understanding of bhakti, that they are thinking that whatever their loss may have been, that those are the things that really help in their existence. Those persons that they may have lost, or the things they have lost, because loss can mean so many different things. However, in the conditioned state, when people have losses, the losses are usually related to them, and we are usually they're engulfed in they lost something that meant something to them. And similarly, in a transcendental arena, there is loss. However, that loss in this entire chapter is related to, or at least in these verses, is related to the loss of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the loss of Krishna. Now, we know ultimately that these are pastimes, and we know Nanda is a pure devotee of the Lord, and we know that this is Krishna Lila, this is the 10th canto that we're hearing from. And so these Leelas, though, are surcharged with lessons to help the conditioned souls and to help those that are aspiring in the path of bhakti, like myself. And so this mood of Nanda Maharaj lamenting in the beginning when Uddhava comes. So Uddhava arrived to Nanda's home, and Nanda comes and meets him, just runs towards him, and Nanda embraces him in great happiness. So there's these feelings, right? All these verses are surcharged with emotions. They're filled with emotions, not the emotion, what we experience in the material world are perverted reflection of transcendental emotions, which means we also experience emotions. That is the beauty of why we're in these material bodies, is actually to be able to learn about the relationship with Krishna, which Nectar of Devotion tells us involves amazing emotions. Any emotion that we've experienced in this material world ultimately comes from Krishna. However, here it's in this material world, it's perverted. It's based on I, me, and mine, generally the emotions we experience. When we read these pastimes and we hear about these beautiful emotions, it's just so wonderful to hear. So he's happy, Nanda Maharaj. At the same time, he is really very sad. So he's experiencing these mixed emotions. However, this personality, Uddhav, has arrived. And what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport is that Uddhava looked just like Nanda's son Krishna. So that's one of the things about Uddhava. He looked like Krishna. And Prabhupada also says, and he gave pleasure to anyone who saw him. So who is this personality? And we're going to hear more about Uddhava as we go on in the rest of this chapter and even in the next chapter. Thank you so much, Anandi. Grateful you're here. So we're going to be hearing more about Uddhava. Uddhava is very dear to Krishna, very, very dear. Actually, Uddhava is compared to Arjuna because he's in that role of a friend. And he's also Krishna's servant. He's playing both these roles of servitor and also friend. So Uddhava, he has an amazing history, and we don't have time to go into Uddhava's history. However, what's important to know about that history is that he and Krishna, from young boys, they had a relationship. And Krishna really, as we learn, Krishna, he admires and serves his devotees. So he requested Uddhav, who he trusted, to go into this environment of grievers, of persons that are lamenting. Now, as I said earlier, I don't know how many of you have experienced an environment where everyone is grieving. It's kind of a difficult environment to enter into. And it's an environment where it requires some understanding of how to make uh, deep internal connection with those persons, how to be able to say the right words to be with those persons. Even here in this world, when we enter into those places where people have experienced loss and they're grieving, it requires us to know some of the right things to say. For example, when somebody is grieving in the material world, we don't say, "How are you?" Right? That's just something we learn as we study grief and loss. We know don't ask the person how they're doing because we already know that they're experiencing sadness. We already know that they're lamenting. So Krishna had so much trust in Uddhav that he knew that Uddhav would go and he would speak the right words and he would be able to connect very deeply with the residents of Vrindavan that he loved so much and that he knew that he really wanted them to hear about him. They were eager to hear about him. And so this is why Uddhav plays this amazing role of going to Vrindavan to share about with Nanda and with the gopis we'll hear later, because these are such beautiful parts of this pastime. How Uddhav is able to speak and not speak, listen, how he's able to listen to these persons as they express their grief. So here Nanda Maharaj will be expressing his grief to Uddhav. So the Brahma Samhita tells us that it's very difficult to understand Krishna from the Vedas, but he is easily understood from a pure devotee like Uddhav, easily understood. And Krishna, as we heard, authorized Uddhav to speak on his behalf. So the lesson here in this verse is unless a person is authorized to speak about Krishna, this to make that connection with another person to offer them devotional service or to bring them to the awareness of devotional service, it's not easy if the person is not authorized. So Uddhava is authorized, and Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita that in order to be authorized, that a person needs to speak, needs to share what they have heard from the previous speakers, previous authorities. So parampara is very important in bringing a message. So in this case, the parampara was Krishna himself speaking to Uddhav, and Uddhav now bringing this message, and Nanda Maharaj being so enthusiastic and so eager. For us, as we're aspiring for bhakti, the easiest way for us to develop that mood of hearing from an authorized person is to remember this verse. Tadvidi paripatena, paripashena sevaya, upadeshantite jnana, jnanastadpadashinaha. The way to approach a spiritual master. And there is some qualities that's required from us, which is to be submissive, to be able to hear in a submissive way, and to be able to render service to such persons. So here we see Uddhava being that example. He's heard from Krishna. He knows he's on a mission. He knows he needs to go and dialogue in such a way that he can ease the hearts of these grieving personalities in Vrindavan. And so he's authorized to do that. And so here, this is the part of the pastime where now Nanda knows that he's authorized. Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, he knows because Uddhava and Krishna has been friends from their childhood. And even though Uddhava was more of an educator, he was very intelligent, and Krishna was a cowherd boy. Still, they had a very deep friendship. And Uddhava was more like kind of a counselor for their whole family. So he was the one that was chosen to go. And Nanda, when he saw him coming, Nanda was so very excited. So here we see that Prabhupada emphasizes that Uddhava brought pleasure, right? As Uddhava looked just like Nanda, and he gave pleasure to anyone who saw him. Why did he give pleasure to anyone who saw him? Well, firstly, Uddhava is a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the pure devotees, they're always immersed and absorbed in the personality of Godhead. And anyone that we see that is absorbed in Krishna, we have a tendency to just want to hear from them. We want to see them because everyone wants to hear about Krishna. Just like I saw that so many of you came on the call at 7:00 just to hear Adipurusha Prabhu chant, because he's chanting the glories of Krishna, and that makes him beautiful. And you want to be there in his environment. You want to be there in the sacred space that he has created, because he's glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the mood of Uddhava. Of Nanda. He was eager. He was so happy because he knew, okay, he's coming here to see us. He's coming with a message from Krishna. I thought I would take I do this sometimes in these classes, is just try to make some of these pastimes relevant to some of the experiences that somehow Krishna has blessed me to have. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience where you see a person that reminds you of Krishna and you gravitate to that person. Generally, that's a spiritual master. Or even if you see somebody that reminds you of the spiritual master, then we tend to be eager and enthusiastic to see that person, right? And so this is a personal example for me. When I see Srila Radhanath Maharaj, for example, my heart, just like when I heard Adipurush this morning, my heart just becomes so calm and so peaceful and so soothing, because Radhanath Swami's external presence, not even speaking of his internal presence, his external presence reminds me of my spiritual master, right? That's somebody that reminds me so much when I see him. So if we can all kind of maybe get in that space a little bit to think of someone that reminds you of a person that's either representing Krishna or representing the representative of Krishna. That's something about them just reminds you of that person. This is what Nanda Maharaj was experiencing. He's arrived. There's something he's brought from Krishna. So in the next text, in the translation, the translations tells us that any devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service of your lotus feet has no difficulty in achieving anything. This is Uddhava speaking. He's saying, "Oh my Lord," this is him speaking about those persons that are engaged in transcendental loving service, which Uddhav was engaged in, that person, they have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the four principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But, oh, great one, as far as I'm concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the lotus, in the loving service of your lotus feet. So that's Uddhav. He's saying this himself. And so pure devotee like Uddhava, he has no material desires, no material afflictions, because he's constantly engaged in the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's also a verse in Bhagavad Gita that helps us to understand this concept of how Krishna reciprocates with his devotees. So he's reciprocating with Uddhav using a more modern term. He's because him and Uddhav have been friends, he's empowering Uddhav, Krishna, because nothing comes to anyone without the grace and the mercy of Krishna. So Krishna authorizes Uddhav to go into this environment, this grieving environment. And that verse is Bhagavad Gita 4:11 that helps us to understand. Yayatam prapajante tam tataiva bhajamaham mama vartante manusha partha sarvashaha, where the translation of this verse says, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pratap. So Uddhav was being rewarded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he was such a devoted personality to the Supreme Lord. And so for him to get this opportunity to go into this environment of grievers, people that are in lamentation, he's going to learn some lessons. And we'll hear about the lessons that Uddhava learned in this environment. Because even in this world, when you go into an environment where people are grievers, there's no way you can come out of there without learning some lessons, right? There's definitely lessons that somehow Krishna has arranged that those kinds of environments, that type of environment, will help someone to become closer to Krishna and will help someone to understand what does it mean to be so devoted to whatever loss that person might have experienced. So in text 15, Krishna talks, Shukadev Goswami speaks about how Uddhav had eaten first-class food, been seated comfortably on a bed, and been relieved from the fatigue by a foot massage. Now, it was interesting because in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that Jiva Goswami says he's quoting authority that Nanda had a servant massage Uddhav's feet. And why is that? Because Uddhav was Nanda's nephew. So this is Vedic culture, right? Culture and etiquette is so very important. It's so much a part of the bigger scheme of things. Firstly, we learn about that eagerness, that happiness to see a representative of the Lord, right? When we see somebody that's representing Krishna, our heart gets nourished, our soul gets nourished. And so that eagerness, we can learn from that experience that Nanda had when he saw Uddhav. Now we're learning about how to treat somebody. How do we behave? What do we do when we meet someone that we really do get some nourishment from? Like, how do we treat Adipurusha Prabhu? What do we do when he comes somewhere and we see him, right? And so, Krishna consciousness is synonymous with personalism. And we've heard that in Bhakti, at the Bhakti Center, we hear so much about personalism. We are personalists, right? And Rukmini Devi, precious Rukmini Devi Prabhu, she always speaks about how to be personal, how to be more personal. So to be more personal means to step out of the bodily concept of life and remember that everyone is a part and parcel of Krishna. And how do we show that? How do we show this mood of affection and care for a person that we might treasure, that might awaken love of God in us? What do we do? What if they come as a guest? How do we treat them? So Prabhupada tells us, we welcome the guests with sweet words. This is what Nanda Maharaj is doing. He's teaching us how to speak sweetly. And we give them a seat. We offer them prasad, and we at least make water available to them. And we get prepared to give our time to those persons and with sincere concern about them. And of course, we invite them to come. And mainly Rupa Goswami tells us that this mood of receiving guests, right? These loving exchanges, they apply to anyone that comes into our environment in the mood of a visitor, in the mood of a guest. And so this is what we can learn from this purport also, this text. There's a beautiful story from Surabi Swami and Japataka Swami. And I read this little story and it just really captured my heart. So I'll share the story. One day Prabhupada was in Bombay and he had visitors from Vrindavan and Mayapur. And that was during a period when the temple construction was going on in both places. So Prabhupada expected his disciples in those places to come asking for money. And the disciples knew that Prabhupada would be expecting and demanding results from them on those important construction projects. Because remember, the disciples were Prabhupada's support system for both the Vrindavan project and the Mayapur project. And Prabhupada, being a project manager, had expectations. Being the transcendental project manager, had expectations from them. So when these disciples visited from distant places, Prabhupada always first welcomed them according to Vaishnava etiquette. Prabhupada had said that his mission was like a war in Maya. And so he received his own soldiers from the field by first offering them, what does he offer? Sweet words and relief. He asked them if they had taken any prasadam, and he suggested that they might want to rest, at least for a few minutes. The immediate pressing problems were put aside as Prabhupada's disciples basked in the sweetness of his darshan and the kind welcome. So why did I speak about this? Why did I share that pastime? Because we're missing this. Vaishnava etiquette and culture, what I've seen over the years in my short years of service to Srila Prabhupada's mission, which, relatively short, even though it's been 40 years. I have seen, like in the beginning when I came, there was so much affection and care in the temples for devotees. And I don't see that as much. And of course, this is not to be critical, it's just to share how important it is from this verse that we maintain Vaishnava etiquette and Vaishnava culture. Because Prabhupada gave that to us, and he wanted us to keep that. So in our temples, when someone visits as a guest, normally we try to give them prasadam. In many temples now, that's not the case. And of course, there's so many different economic reasons for this. However, even if we can offer someone, as Prabhupada said, some water, something as an offering for them taking the time to come into the temple. This is the example of Prabhupada. The next verse, this one has no purport. He's inquiring. That's the other thing, that when you meet a guest, someone that you value, someone that is representing the representatives of the Lord, or someone that is speaking about the Lord, is you value them so much that you're curious about where they came from. Like you have so many visitors at the Bhakti Center, and so the curiosity and the questions about what they may be doing in wherever they have come from, right? That's one of the ways that Nanda Maharaj is teaching us about how to treat a guest. So oftentimes we see sannyasis come, or not just sannyasis, but even a visiting devotee from some place, and we don't know anything about them, right? But Nanda Maharaj is checking in. He's checking in. How are the relatives? What's going on? The son of Sura, right? Sureshwar. How is he doing? How's his friends and relatives now that they're together? Because now he's not locked up in prison anymore, right? So he's inquiring. about the welfare of others. Srila Prabhupada, he was such a perfect example of that also. Whenever he went into an environment, sometimes he would ask. I remember Giraj Maharaj telling a story like that. There was a devotee that just, his behavior was not so acceptable to the other devotees, and they wanted this devotee to leave, right? And so when Prabhupada came, Prabhupada asked about that devotee. And of course, Giraj Maharaj was sharing how, they told Prabhupada that about this person's behavior and that they wanted him to go. And I believe they had asked him to go. And Prabhupada says, no, he shouldn't leave. Prabhupada's mood was like to encourage people, no matter what's going on with them. Of course, Prabhupada also says temple is not for the crazies and the lazies. So we definitely need to understand now that there's not so many people in the temples anymore, but even in our homes, right? When we invite people, we need to be conscious and be aware of who they are. At the same time, though, to have that mood of welcoming people in our environments by asking them questions, by being curious about them. What's going on with you? How's your family? What's happening? The next text, 17. Thank you, Jamuna Jaya. Thank you. The next text was about now Nanda Maharaj is remembering. He's going into some memories. And he's saying, yeah, fortunately, because of his own sins, the sin of Kamsa, he always hated the brothers. He always hated the Yadus. And so he's remembering, right? He's in grief, he's grieving, he's sad. However, in that presence of Uddhav, he's getting a chance to remember about the Lord. He's remembering about these personalities that were around the Lord and what happened. Now Kamsa is dead. So Kamsa himself, he says, alas, alas, my brother-in-law, I am indeed so sinful. He admits, Kamsa, that he's sinful. And exactly like a man eating Rakshasa who eats his own child, I have killed so many born of you. So he tells that to his sister and brother-in-law. He himself admits how sinful he is. And then the last two texts, which I had just looked at the time, is this kind of grief where we remember, does that person remember us? And if you've ever had somebody that left, let's say a person that was very dear to you, and they've, you might have sometimes, some moments. What's going on with that person right now? What are they doing? Do they ever come around? Do they see us? Even though we know that they're not in their bodies, like His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, he told us before he left. He said, you're going to experience me more after I'm gone than when I'm in the body. So we are prepared that he is in the environment, right? He will be coming. So this is what Nanda Maharaj, he has this curiosity and this grieving, this memory, these memories that he experienced when Krishna was on the planet with him, when Krishna lived in Vrindavan, when Krishna was acting as, his child. Even though we know Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, but still he wasn't aware that Krishna was God. And so he's lamenting and just remembering Krishna. And Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance and forgetfulness. Knowledge and also from him, from Krishna. And so, yes, although Krishna, he's the one that gives us memories. He's the one that let us forget things. He himself, yet Nanda Maharaj, his father, is asking, is he remembering? Of course, we know Krishna is remembering. Krishna is always remembering. And so I'm going to stop because I just see we have a couple of minutes. And I just realized how I was just going on and on. But there's so many lessons for me in these 5 verses. So thank you. Let us be sweet in our communication with each other. Thank you so much.
Please stay for the afterglow, Prabhujini. Please stay.
What are you going to do?
Thank you,
Hey, Bima.
Vrajalila. Everybody
Be-
is appreciating all the practical gems that you shared with us in class. Thank you so much.
Coming from Bima Prabhu. Wow. That for me is like, thank you, dear Lord. I somehow connected in the heart of Bima Prabhu by your mercies, my Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. Thank you. Yes, thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna. Okay, would anyone like to ask a question or share a reflection on what has been shared? Let's do it. Damodar Priya.
Hare Krishna, dear Vrajalila Prabhu. Thank you as always for your class. I have a question. You brought up a really good point about how Prabhupada said that temples are not for lazies or crazies. I had never actually heard that terminology before. And I was wondering, what are some practical ways that we can still be welcoming, but also get help to the people that need help? Because to me, from what you said, it seems like you're saying, which I think is valid, that temples are really not equipped to deal with people who have very major mental problems. And like how can all that be addressed if I'm just curious.
Yeah, so my service presently is a part of Karuna Care. And one of the recommendations we have for ISKCON is to have a person that lives in a temple, if you have people living in the temple, that has some skills to deal with mental health. That is so very key, because more and more we will have people coming to us that have mental health concerns, because that's the way the planet, that's right now how the design that's going on for the people on our planet right now. And so we need to be equipped. We need to have the tools and the skills to be able to make ourselves available. One of the things that we're wanting to introduce in ISKCON right now is to have devotees just being skilled and trained to sit with someone and simply listen. People just want to be listened to. Most of the time, people's mental health concerns comes from the fact that they have not had opportunities to express themselves, to be heard and valued. And so we may need to just take time, maybe form a small group, and just, sit and listen to people. Just like, yeah, that's what Uddhava did in the beginning. He just listened to Nanda, just listened to Nanda Maharaj. So listening is key. And that's one of the things that we're hoping that our ISKCON organization will institute more with its members, to get people trained, that doesn't require much training. Just have compassionate listeners in your community, people that can listen and have some understanding of mental health. Of course. Jai Shri Radha Muralidhar ki jai.
Shri Guru Chandra ki jai. Okay, turn on your cameras if you can. It's darshan time, and stay for afterglow. Bhima has something to say, I guess. For the afterglow. What is this mess, Bhima?
My Lord is in this storm.
Oh yeah, that's a storm, right.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful class, Vrajalila. Thank you. Very practical, very always compassionate, all-inclusive. I call it all-inclusive when there's a class like that. Okay. So should we enter the afterglow? Bhima Prabhu, are you ready with your comment? Is that a reflection on lazies and crazies?
Yeah, because I was somehow allowed into the temple. So apparently nobody knew that particular maxim. We, as Ananda Bihari well knows, we have, by virtue of our hosting, our Vaishnav hosting. Paul, hold on for a second. I'll be right there. We always have to deal with something like that, and of course, as we all know, prasadam is the outreach that we have. You know, I myself took prasadam for a whole year, going on Wednesday night cooking classes that Radhanath Maharaj used to give. It was myself and the boxing team. We all used to go on Wednesdays because free food. And we slowly got to know Radhanath Maharaj. All he was allowed to do, because it was in the school itself, was to cook prasad and show us how to cook vegetarian food. But because it was in the school, he was not allowed to preach. He was not allowed to mention anything about religion. And but we kept going, we got curiouser and curiouser, as Alice in Wonderland says. We got curiouser and curiouser, and then next thing you know, we were going to the temple, 6 of us, from heavyweight all the way down to flyweights. We would all sit in a circle around Radhanath Maharaj, and he would tell us stories. So we can see that this personalism, this ability to reach out simply with the offering of food, is present in Prabhupada when he simply had an apple to cut at 26 2nd Avenue. He would just cut an apple and hand out slices of the apple. We have to realize how magical prasadam is. And that's Adi's program. And that's how we follow. So we always have a way to reach out to the lazies and crazies. And I can attest, at that time in college, I was definitely crazy. Definitely. So it does work. I just want to say something because it's just stupendous. I just want to share it. This morning I got up and I was doing my sadhana, and then part of my sadhana is, of course, to do some writing. And there was a storm outside, and a little line popped into my head. My Lord is in this storm. That's how personal Krishna is. He's even within the storm, because it's blowing very hard here. And as you can see here, I just came out and saw that a huge tree fell, as you can see. Wow. And it missed one of my sheds. It missed my tractor. It missed everything.
Kubja.
Yes, Kubja here. This is Kubja, bent in 3 places, but very useful. And it missed even the wheelbarrow it fell on. As you can see, this limb here missed everything. So, I mean, of course, we have to accept if Krishna had decided to send this tree down on this shed and ruin my Kubja, I would have had to accept that as Krishna's personal little warning to me about something. But Krishna has sent this tree down. and has, I'm going to be at this all day. And so we see that, we can be reminded of Krishna and how personal he is in everything that happens. And it's such a wonderful adventure we go on when we understand that good or bad, enjoying prasadam or fighting in war, that Krishna is always there side by side with us, and especially during this class because of Prabhuji, wonderful and beautiful narration of Krishna's pastimes. Hare Krishna.
I have a quick question for you, Bhima Prabhu. Do you use firewood?
Oh, yeah. In
We
fact, I
always
was saying, I have no place to put this firewood. Now I have to build another because I have so much firewood. Because I have 20 acres and 10 acres is woods. And up here we had a tornado, so there are a lot of trees down. And so I have endless variety of firewood, which is wonderful. Yes. Love the fire.
We're gonna have to come to you to get some firewood. We also use a wood stove, so trees are
Isn't that
wonderful.
wonderful? Yes, isn't the firewood and having a wood stove? It's so wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, keeping Krishna warm.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak? We can take one more reflection.
I have a question.
Venetia.
Yes, good morning. Thank you
Good
so
morning.
much. I love your classes so much. And I love what you said about how we should keep our exchanges here sweet. I love your use of the word sweet, and that's going to inspire me all day. And I just wanted to ask you, you said that, and the quote that we should, one of the ways in which we should approach the spiritual master is submissively. And it's a word that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and I would just very much appreciate to hear how you think of that word practically speaking, that submissive mindset.
Thank you so much, Phoenicia. That's such a beautiful question, especially in these days where that word can be taken so out of context. And especially even though we're not our bodies, in the body, we're not our bodies, we're spiritual beings, we're spirit souls. However, as we are evolving in that understanding, we can see how in the world that word has been so misused. And oftentimes it does affect those persons that are in women bodies. It affects everyone, but somehow it's a historical thing that it affects women a little more so. So in terms of the spiritual context and in terms of the spiritual master, submission simply means to be ready to be able to hear the instructions of the spiritual master, whatever instruction the spiritual master given that the spiritual master is a pure devotee of the Lord. And so if we listen to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and if we are able to hear the instructions that he had from his spiritual master and how he submissively meaning he took it into his heart to be able to make himself available to help expand the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in the mood of expanding the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the mood of bringing awareness to those souls that are struggling in the material world, we are submissive to that mood, to the mood of the teachers that are helping us to bring awareness to ourselves and to share that with others. It's not a mood of exploitation. Submissive doesn't mean to be exploited. And yes, in our conditioned state, that's how people think. This is a fact that submissive means do as I say, even though that person may not be qualified, and even though that person may be, a cheater, but still do as I say. No, that's not submissive. That's stupidity. Being submissive is to be able to first understand, what am I submissive to? What is the goal of my life? Who am I? What is my purpose? What am I to do as my purpose in my service? Who's my we community? What's the we community that will support me, that I can say, I belong to this we community, we together. And that community will support us to submissively means take to heart the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and do our best. Do our best, whatever that might be. You know, you say you appreciate the class. I don't really, in my heart, sincerely, I don't know anything about giving class. I do know that I want to know how to love. I do know that. And I that's my submission, is to be able to learn how to love. And that's what Krishna wants. And that's what the spiritual master wants. How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we do that with each other? How do we start loving ourselves as spiritual beings living in a body? How do we do that? So that's my understanding. Adipurusha is here. He's a dear, dedicated devotee of Srila Prabhupada. Please, if you'd like to add anything, Ananda Bihari Prabhu, so many devotees are here.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you
This was
so
so
much.
beautiful, Vrajalila. I want to learn how to love. Wow, what a powerful line. Adipusha Prabhu, you have anything to add to that? It's hard to add to that. Yeah, this is the first time Adipusha Prabhu is not willing to speak, because it was perfect. What you said was perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've never seen that before. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. My only concern is that I want to make sure I recognize you in your spiritual bodies wherever I go next. I want to make sure that I know, well, this is Bhima. Look at this gopi with the beard. That must be Bhima.
That's
Okay.
a beautiful desire, Prabhu. Such a
Yeah.
beautiful desire. Krishna hears that and sees that, right? For all, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to lose your association. Everybody on this call, all the devotees in my life, I would just make sure you tell me that that's you, so I recognize you on my next destination. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Wonderful class, Vrajalila. Please hug a Kavira for us.
We will. And we'll be sure that he's here the next month.
Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you for embracing me in the community. You're a part of my we community. And
Try.
I look forward to being able to
We
miss
love you.
by Krishna and Guru's grace, I am privileged and honored to be in this community. Thank you.
Jai. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Vrajalila and Kavira Prabhu's ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Bye.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Bol. Thank you, Prabhu, for your service. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.